What is up, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Destination the Show. This is episode 115. My name is Jamie Cameron, joined as ever by Jeremy Nygaard. You look like you just got back from like a spring training front nine after a baseball game. What's going on?
What happens is that I've got these Twins polos that I don't ever get to wear because I don't wear Twins clothing after a Twins loss. So last year there was not many times to do it. So this year, as the Twins are winning, I'm every day is a Twins shirt. So
that's right.
I just haven't changed since I got home from school, and it gives kind of this funky effect on the screen. So I thought I'd roll with it, and as long as the Twins win, I can wear a new Twins shirt.
Right on. The inexorable force that is the Minnesota Twins of the AL Central.
Unbelievable.
What's going on? All right, we have a guest, so we're going to skip past all of our usual nonsense. We'll quickly do some housekeeping stuff, ways that you can support the show. You can like and subscribe on your preferred podcast platform of choice. You can find all of our ramblings at YouTube. The handle there is at Destination the Show. If you want to send us a question, and so many folks continue to do so, we're really grateful. You can do so on Twitter if you can get it to work. Handle there is at DTS_pod1, on Blue Sky at Destination the Show, or the old-fashioned way by email, destinationtheshow@gmail.com. But without further ado, we got a guest, and we're going to talk draft. Been super excited for this conversation for a little while, and we are excited to welcome back to the show for either the fourth or the fifth time, Baseball America's draft expert, Carlos Collazo. Carlos, what's up, man? How are you?
Hello. I am great. Thanks for having me on, guys. How are you guys doing?
Doing well. We're very excited by the twin unusual goings on that are a half decent Twins team, at least for April, and also the number 3 pick in the draft is exciting. So
picking 3, I feel like any year is fun. Maybe especially this year, although maybe anyone who's not picking 1 is just a little bummed they don't have 1 this year. But
for sure,
I think you're probably in the range still where the teams haven't started freaking out about who the good players are to pick. So 3 feels still pretty good, even if you're not getting Rock Chalowski.
Yeah. I'm excited. We're excited to dig into some of those options with you, and start to get some of your thoughts and feelings on this year's class. And certainly more skin in the game than the Twins usually picking like 15 or 18 or 21. But I wanted to start, Carlos, if we can, by actually picking your brain a little bit about the Twins 2025 draft class. Of course, we're still super early in the 2026 season. And one player in particular I want to ask you about, because I've been trying to keep up to date with all of your various musings on BA's Draft Pod and Future Projection, which is another great offering you guys can catch with Ben Badler. And you've been catching, I feel like, a little bit of heat for your appreciation for Derek Curiel. This time last year, I feel like maybe the guy you were a little bit more on an island around was Merrick Houston, who the Twins ended up taking. And he was actually off to a really good start at high A this year. Maybe a little more power than we expected, a little bit more strikeouts than we expected in the early going. But just curious, if you're looking back, what did you appreciate about Houston at the time? I do feel like you were kind of like high guy on the BA staff on Merrick Houston, and maybe still continue to be as a prospect.
Yeah, I definitely was the highest guy on Houston at the time. I think I remain the high guy unless something has changed. Like, I would have Merrick Houston as a top 100 prospect right now. He was on my preseason top 100, a little behind the scenes if you're not familiar with how we create that, but all of us make our own individual top 150s as we're kind of getting prepared to build that list out. I think I had Merrick Houston like the 80s or so. So I'm very high on him. I just think it's a profile that has a lot of ways to create value. I think he's maybe, I don't know if I would say the clear out best defensive shortstop in the minor leagues, but I think he's one of the best defensive shortstops in the minor leagues. He does everything you want to see at the position. I was encouraged by the power increase that he showed during his draft year. I know there are a lot of people who are very kind of skeptical of what that power is going to be. I was kind of excited about some of the home runs he hit in spring training. And I just think he has a great foundation of contact skills. So it is a bit odd to see the strikeouts early on. I would expect those to come down. Because I just think he's never been a guy who struck out a ton. But yeah, I love the profile. I like the pick quite a bit. Where he was at, I would have taken him over a number of shortstops who went ahead of the Twins in the draft. And yeah, I'll happily die on the Merrick Houston team, I suppose. I think he's just a really good player.
Happy for you to be right and us to be wrong, because I think we were a little bit.
Oh, you guys were bummed about it? Well, hey, he's only high now. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah. I think there was all those kind of flashier names, right? The names that you kind of alluded to. I don't think either of us saw them all being gone by the time the Twins were on the clock,
right?
Because any of those names had something a little flashier than Merrick Houston, right? And when the flashiest thing is the defense, it's just like, oh, we did that before with the Miller, right? Who was the Miller guy?
Noah Miller.
Yeah. It never really worked out. So I think that was kind of the disappointment, and it feels like the Twins have gone to that well a lot in the higher parts of the draft. And so, drafting 3, right? Something's gonna be flashy, and I think that's what makes it a lot more exciting, at least for me.
For sure.
I think my sense now is that the Twins were scooped on one of Gavin Fein or Daniel Pierce is potentially who they were lining up, and that was just that run of like 6 prep guys that I think with JoJo Parker in that mix and all those guys. So, but hey, long live Merrick Houston. So thanks for being the standard bearer there, Carlos. The Twins went on to do something that we actually haven't seen them do a ton of. So I want to get your take here as well. So something we talk about on the show a lot is something that, of course, a lot of teams do is they'll take college right-handers in the middle rounds with this thought to like, we're going to be able to add stuff, add velo, do pitch design work, and we're going to come up with like a Zebby Matthews type guy who is like an extreme strike thrower who we can take from throwing 92 to suddenly throwing 96, and he's in the conversation as a big league arm. The Twins deviated from that a little bit last year. They went Riley Quick in Comp A, who looked ridiculous in his pro debut a few days ago, and then James Ellwanger out of DBU, certainly leaning into a little bit more velocity. Yeah. Just from your kind of perch point, do you see that as a trend of teams leaning into those higher velo college arms? Essentially, I guess, like, are teams, from your perspective, offloading some of their pitching development to college programs and taking more and more guys who start a little bit closer to upper minors ready than they used to?
I think potentially. I don't know that there's anything specific to like just take big velocity guys who maybe need to refine more of the strike throwing. I'm not sure if that's like a specific trend that is consistent throughout the industry, but you definitely, I feel like you definitely have teams that just feel more comfortable with college pitchers because they're going to be quicker to the majors, you would think. And you also just have this sort of survivorship bias. Like if you've got although it's interesting with both these guys, they've had injury questions in the past. So maybe you would throw that one out. I really like the high school pitching demographic. I'm not sure why teams seem as hesitant about it. I mean, I get it, especially if you're decision makers, you maybe have a different sort of timeline for when you want to be competitive. But I tend to think that like we're hearing a lot about how great college development is. I would push back a little on that. I think like the pro development is the best development, in particular for pitchers, because these are not guys who, if you struggle, you're getting bumped out of a rotation, or college pitchers are really just dialing up your breaking ball usage. There are some teams who really do a good job. And I think probably it's one of those things where development at every level is better these days than it's been in the past. But I do think that a lot of teams think there's a lot of value in going hitter first and taking a lot of pitchers later, because there are just more levers you can pull in a player development situation to gain value from those picks. And I know there are a lot of teams that just think, hey, there are only so many hitters. We're going to find there are some innate traits about hitting that you can't really teach the same way that you might be able to help a pitcher throw more strikes or help a pitcher find a breaking ball that works for them, or help a pitcher find velocity. I do like both of the arms that the Twins took. I think Riley Quick, I wouldn't have been surprised if he went in the first round, and then James Ellwanger, when you watch him, when he's dialed in, he is a ton of fun. It's this like big, long, fast arm, super athletic, 2 breaking balls that he can really spin at a high level. And his first 2 starts this year have been pretty exciting for both these guys. For me, it's going to be like, what is the real quality of the strikes?
Yep.
But I think, like, from a pure stuff perspective, they're both really exciting.
Love it.
I want to ask something real quick, and we can dig deeper into this maybe when we get into this year's class. But you talked about how, you like the prep pitching demographic, and I think I fall into that same camp. But are we getting to the point in time where it's just going to be something that when you have a limited pool, however limited that is, maybe it's a huge pool, but it's a finite amount of money, where you just don't want to compete with the colleges, right? Like Dax Whitney went undrafted, right? And so the price tag that we're talking about, it's like, well, we could have to shell out $3.5, $4 million to this prep guy, or we can give it a couple years and see. Do you think that's going to be a bigger thing? I think it's already been a thing.
Yeah.
But is it going to be a bigger thing as these pockets get deeper?
I think so. You run into this weird situation where if you've got a really deep, talented class of high school pitchers, like, for instance, this year, it's one of the better years of high school pitching we've had. All these guys we have around the first round, they're all committed to power colleges. And so they're all going to have pretty high price tags. So all these guys are fighting for finite amounts of money. You remove all the teams who just won't go high school pitching with their first pick overall. You start getting deeper into the class. And some of these guys are just going to price themselves out. They're like, hey, I have a $3 million price tag. There are only so many teams who are going to give that. I'm competing with all these other high school pitchers and all these other college pitchers in the country. It's the 50th pick now. I think I'm a first round talent. I'm just going to go to the SEC and dominate and beat Dax Whitney. I'll be first overall pick and I'll be getting $9 million. So all of these pitchers are going to bet on themselves. It's probably easier to bet on yourself in college as a pitcher these days because you're getting just more money by going to college baseball with NIL. It's not like, oh, sign for money now or go to college. It's sign for money now or go to college and also get some money. So it's like the risk for them does seem to be negated. And I think from the team's perspective, it's really just like, how much are you afraid of the high school pitching demographic? Because I don't know exactly what Dax Whitney's price tag was coming out of high school. We heard that he was really locked into his commitment to Oregon State. There are some colleges that just seem really difficult to sign players out of. But like, if you could have gotten Dax Whitney for back of the first round money in the first round in high school, like that would be a pretty lights out looking pick right now. What the Mariners did with Ryan Sloan, signing him in the second round, he looks like one of the best pitchers in baseball. So like, there is this window of value where if you're identifying high school pitchers and you're willing to take a risk on those guys, you can wind up with just massive amounts of value by jumping on them before they go prove themselves. Like, everybody knows Paul Skeens is a great pitcher. Not everyone's going to have a chance to draft him out of college, but most teams do have a chance to draft those guys out of high school. So I'm always really appreciative, I guess, of the teams who are willing to take those risks. You run the 85% risk that high school pitcher turns into nothing. Right. Yeah.
And I mean, I was a big fan of the Cole Stewart pick when it happened. That was before Jamie and I talked draft a lot.
Yeah.
Because it was like he hadn't focused on baseball. He was going to be a Texas quarterback and going to be the best thing ever. And it didn't work out. And I think that really had spooked the Twins away from going to that demographic early since.
I think too, I feel like people maybe overstate the safety of other profiles that are perceived as safe. Like, there are a lot of college hitters that make a lot of contact, have 3 years of production. Like, those guys are not guarantees to pan out either. So I just wish the teams were a little bit more risk tolerant, because it does feel like most teams aren't these days. And it's just nice to get a little bit of variety in how teams are doing it. I mean, another one of the players we haven't even mentioned from the Twins draft a year ago, Quentin Young. I mean, that's not my exact flavor of prospect, but it's certainly a high risk, high reward, like swing for the fences pick with Quentin Young. And maybe it's just when you're, maybe it's just when you're in the second round, it's just easier to tolerate that. But yeah.
And I think you've hit on something, Carlos, there. And Jeremy, I would disagree with you just very slightly. I do think the Twins will tolerate the risk as long as it's not with their first pick anymore. So if we look back to the last 3 drafts, 2023 Campe, Charlie Soto, that's looking like a good pick, assuming he comes back from the injury. 2024 Comp B, Dason Hill, who we had on a couple of weeks ago, top 100 prospect. Carlos, I think he was another one of your guys.
Sleeper. Yeah, loved him. Still do.
So they are leaning into it. I just think they're not going to lean into it at 3.
And I'm all for that. I think, but going to your point too with the safe demographics, like in my years of following the draft, like one of the safest names ever was like Danny Hultzen.
Mm-hmm.
He was going to be like, he's a lock to be at least a mid rotation guy.
Right.
Did he ever play in the major leagues?
You're aging us, Jeremy, here badly.
Let me actually pull this up. But yeah, I do feel like there are these just like especially the guys at the top of the draft that you're just like, oh, it's a no doubt guaranteed. Like for me, it's still very early in his career. We'll see. But Dylan Cruz, if Dylan Cruz doesn't pan out, like if he doesn't work out, I have no idea how I'm supposed to feel confident in a quote unquote high floor guy. And then Termarr Johnson on the high school side, it was like, oh, this is the best high school hitter we've ever seen. Again, still early. Like both these guys could still become quality big leaguers, but they certainly haven't lived up to their expectations in pre-draft hype at this point. And you could, literally just go run through any draft class and see how many players don't pan out. It's not a great hit rate in baseball, regardless of the demographics.
Right.
Okay, let's transition into a little bit of kind of high-level questions around this year's draft class, Carlos. Always an interesting group, and I guess I'm going to come out firing with like a contention that you can feel free to disagree with, which is that I feel like the closer we get to the draft, the more people appreciate the class. Like I see a lot of folks falling in love with the class, the more familiarity we get with certain players. I'm not sure if that's something you agree with, but I want to test both that assumption then about a couple of specific demographics here. From your perspective, fair to say or not that the perception of the prep hitter demo in this class has cooled a little bit from kind of pre-cycle? I'm thinking about guys like, Tyler Spangler, who I think has been banged up and injured, but like top 10-ish type name at the beginning of the cycle. Now he's a guy who's probably in the 20s to 30s. Will he sign? I think he's a Stanford commit, so that might be difficult anyway. What's your read on the prep hitter demographic at this point?
Yeah, I feel like the prep hitter demographic is one that, even going back to like prior to the summer circuit, so like going into this class, like the summer's kind of weird now with the overlap, but basically as you're heading into the summer circuit for this year's class, the amount of hype that was talked about with this high school hitting group was massive. And I feel like even after the summer, it cooled off quite a bit because there were a lot of really high profile hitters who performed as underclassmen who just did not have good summers. I'm thinking about outfielders like Brady Harris in Florida, Kevin Roberts Jr. in Mississippi. These are two guys that on our initial list we had as like top 10 overall players in the class. Massive tools, power, speed, potential up the middle profiles, and they just did not perform. It's kind of been more of the same with those two in particular this spring. Now they seem like guys who could maybe get to campus. Jacob Lombard is a massively tooled out high school shortstop. I mean, he didn't have the sort of summer that I'm talking about with Brady Harris and Kevin Roberts Jr., but there are big swing and miss questions with him that just kind of give you a little bit more hesitance in the profile. And I do feel like you talk about the injuries to guys like Tyler Spangler. He's not really played much. So it's kind of like wait and see for him. It does feel like we don't have, certainly compared to last year's class where it's just this loaded high school shortstop class. Guys are going out, performing, getting better, improving. I think at the top, Grady Emerson is better than he probably would have been 1-1 a year ago in that class. I do think he's a better prospect at the same stage than Eli Willits. Probably would have been a better prospect overall on our board than Ethan Holiday. But yeah, the first round quality depth of high school hitters, I think there are questions. Even guys like Bowen, California outfielder who really mashed throughout the circuit. It feels like a little bit lighter in terms of the scout feedback. He came out a little bit slower. So yeah, I would agree. I think really for the last 9 months, maybe the prep hitting demographic has not maybe lived up to what we thought it could be a year ago.
Okay. Assumption number 2, I'll test, and I'll lean into one of your favored demographics, which is prep pitching. So just I'm scrolling through BA's board a little bit just to kind of call out some names here, right? Gio Rojas, Carson Bowleman. Let's see if we go down a little bit further. Logan Schmidt, Brady Bumila, Jared Grindlinger. When was the last time that we saw a class of prep lefties this exceptional? And if you kind of take out Bowman and Rojas as the top two. Just and I'm only kind of placing them there because they've been the stable guys from kind of the beginning of the cycle. Do you have a particular favorite of the rest of the group of prep lefties?
Okay, yeah. For the first question, I think that at least this is the best high school pitching class since 2018. It might be the best high school pitching class in general I've covered in terms of depth. It's interesting because there have been classes where you have maybe one or two pitchers who are ranked a little bit higher in terms of a universal board. Like none of the high school pitchers you mentioned feel like locks to go top 10, like Seth Hernandez was, like a Mackenzie Gore or Hunter Green were in the past. But just the quality of depth and like impact quality, like top 50, like players I would be happy with 15 to 30 in the first round. There are at least 5 high school pitchers I think I could list off right now that I think I would definitely take in the back of the first round if it was me personally. And left-handed pitching in particular, I can't remember a class this deep and talented from the left-handed pitching high school demographic. It's absolutely loaded. There are even guys further down the board that feel like quality second or third round picks. I don't know. Did you mention Logan Schmidt in that group? I think you probably did. He's like the third guy on our board right now. And you said outside of Rojas and Boloman, who would I take of the lefty group?
Yep.
I would probably take Logan Schmidt. I think his combination of command and control, frame, projectable frame, secondary quality, youth. He just checks a lot of boxes, and it's also a fastball that's already been up to 98. So he's not some like pitchability type of arm. Even Matthew Liberatore in 2018 for his class, I don't know that he was touching 98 miles per hour at this age, and he was the top ranked high school left-handed pitcher in the class. Like it's kind of silly the amount of stuff this group of high school pitchers have. So he would be. I'm a little hesitant for Brody Bumila. So Bumila is the Massachusetts left-handed pitcher who's 6'9", throwing 101 miles an hour with just elite extension, just super outlier, super silly, like Jack Bauer-ish kind of stuff from the left side. I actually haven't seen him live because he had a pretty serious elbow surgery that kept him out all of last year. And so I really wonder, like, where is a player like that going to fall in a draft? We were just talking about how teams are hesitant for high school pitchers in general, and you tack on a serious elbow surgery, a guy who's really not throwing a lot of secondary so far this spring. So this is a very long-winded answer, but I'll just say Logan Schmidt is probably my guy of those if I can't do the top two.
I mean, I do. This is probably too worn of a joke at this point, but I feel like he goes to the organization that drafted another 6'9" lefty in the first round last year, right? There's one organization who does have the highest tolerance for prep. And
I had him right there in our mock draft the other day.
There you
go.
There you go.
It's the only place I feel comfortable putting him right now.
Okay, one more, and then we'll take a quick break, and then we'll come back and dig into some of the Twins options at 3. Carlos, I always like to ask you this, and always keep it as general as you want. So this doesn't have to be from a particular range, but a pitcher and hitter that you feel like you are higher on than the rest of the industry. Who are you fighting battles with other folks around the cycle?
Well, you kind of mentioned the first one. I feel like I just need to double click on LSU outfielder Derek Curiel. I don't understand why people are so skeptical of this profile. I think he's maybe like a top 2 pure hitter in this class. I think he's one of the best pure hitters in the college class in particular. I would take him, no doubt, inside the top 10 of this year's group. I wouldn't have any concerns about it. I think he's a really talented center fielder. I think he's going to stick at the position. He's just very instinctive, polished player, makes a ton of contact. I think he hits the ball harder than people give him credit for. He's one of the few college just hitters in general who has really not flinched at conference play. He's continued to perform, maybe even leveled up his game. And I just feel like this is a profile that I feel a lot of comfort with. I think you've seen him make some physical strides over the last few years, dating back to his high school days. He is a leaner guy. I don't think he's ever going to be a 25-plus home run sort of hitter, but I do think he has the sort of barrel feel to be able to get to maybe fringy or average power. And if he does that and he's the sort of pure hitter, I think that he can be, while also playing rock solid, maybe even plus defense in center field, despite not being a typical burner for the position. I just have a lot of comfort with that profile. On the pitching side, I will go with Tennessee right-hander Tegan Kuhns. I typically have a high school pitcher in this demographic, but Kuhns is a guy who he just looks the part on the mound. Everything that comes out of his hand looks like it has a chance to be above average or better. I got to see him live earlier this year, and I felt like his command for all of his secondaries were much more impressive than I expected them to be. He's actually like been bumped out of the starting rotation at Tennessee. Tennessee has done this with a lot of high profile pitchers actually in the past, but even when he got bumped, I thought his peripherals were actually pretty good in a starting role. His fastball metrically and just pure velocity wise is kind of a pitch that you want to see from your pitchers for whatever reason. And I think it's mostly to do with fastball command. It hasn't played up to where I think it maybe could in the future. He tends to leave a lot of fastballs middle, but I think his control overall is really good. I like the fact that he's got a 4-pitch mix and he has a very distinct approach attacking righties and lefties. And on top of all that, I just like the way the delivery works. I like the foundation of athleticism he has. I think if you get Tegan Kuhns with a team that really knows what they're doing from a pitching standpoint, he could really take off. He was a guy who I thought had a chance to move into like top 15, top 20 range on the board with a strong season. It doesn't really look like that's quite happening. And I know there are some people who are just a little bit more pessimistic of him in general than me. But I like all the ingredients he has on the mound. So those would be my two.
Do you think the Curiel thing is because some of the supplementary tools that he brings are more opaque to folks? Like,
yeah, definitely. And I think it's also like ground ball. Like he doesn't hit the ball in the air. He doesn't hit the ball in the air a lot. He doesn't pull the ball a lot. And there are just going to be people that think, hey, he's not going to have impact, and he's not the sort of runner who's going to like necessitate that he stays in center field. Like we're going to have 70 runners that'll move him off the position. And if he's Derek Curiel, left fielder and pro ball, and you don't buy into the power at all, that's really tough to profile. So I can see the critical view of Curiel. I just find myself on the positive side of it.
Yeah, right on.
Carlos, have you ever heard anybody describe a baseball player's skills or tools as opaque before? Jamie just did it.
I actually don't know that I have. I really like that word. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jeremy. I'm glad to bring something to the conversation here.
Maybe I'll have to drop that in a scouting report this year.
There you go. There you go. I'll look forward to it. Okay, we're going to take a quick ad break. We will be back in part 2 and dig into some of the Twins options at 3 with Carlos. All right, welcome back to part 2 of Destination the Show. We are here with Baseball America's draft expert Carlos Collazo. We are going to dig into some of the Twins options at 3. I feel like this list that I'm drawing up keeps getting just a little bit longer of the Twins options at 3, but we're going to start with Grady Emerson, Carlos, if that's okay. Prep shortstop out of Texas. I think fair to say that he's been kind of one of the most stable profiles at the top of the BA board throughout the cycle. I guess the question here, and I do get the sense that there is a little bit of kind of prospect fatigue with him just because he's just kind of been there at 2 or 3 being excellent. Does he have any questions left to answer for you? Playing in Texas, maybe not against the most exciting competition. What are you looking to see, and how are you kind of evaluating him, given that he's not maybe playing against the greatest caliber of opposition?
Yeah, I wish he hadn't transferred, because he definitely transferred and started playing against worse competitions his senior year. I don't really have many questions with Grady. Like you said, he's been at the top of our board for so long. He is such an established prospect. I just looked back to see our rankings history of Grady Emerson. We had him at the top of our high school board back in February of 2025, number 1. He's not faltered from that position. And ever since we had our universal board, including high school and college, he's been number 2. No one has moved him out of that ranking. He's done what was expected of him so far this spring. Again, you kind of expect a hitter who is as advanced as Grady to go out and perform against the competition he's playing. He's done it. It's a very well-rounded tool set. I think the loudest tool is his hit tool. If you ask me who's the best pure hitter in this class, I would say Grady Emerson. I would take his hit tool over Rock Chalowski. It is far more advanced than where Rock Chalowski's hit tool was when he was in high school. Rock has made a lot of impressive progress offensively. I think he's quite a good hitter. But I think with Grady, you almost universally will hear plus hit tool feedback on him. I don't know if you would necessarily get that with Rock or really a number of the other hitters at the top of this class. And then you add on just this rock solid secondary tool set. He's been a plus runner in the past. I don't know if that'll be his grade long-term for speed, but at least a solid average runner. He's a very instinctual defender at shortstop. He's not the flashiest defender at the position, but he does everything that you would want to see for a player to stick there. I think he has an easy plus arm. There's just a lot of comfort and a lot of safety with Grady Emerson. I was talking to a few scouting directors in preparation for the mock, and comfort and safety were words that came up a lot with Grady Emerson, which is really unusual because I feel like typically your top of the class high school player, it's like, oh, big upside potential. We can get a franchise player superstar. And your college players kind of at the same range are like, those are the safer profiles. But I really think it's maybe the inverse this year, where Grady just does feel like that super safe profile. He's one of the most established amateur hitters we've seen in years. His pedigree against just competition older than him when he was younger, with Team USA, in the circuit, against previously better competition in Texas. It's hard to have any glaring question marks with Grady. If you have one, it's probably kind of similar to Eli Willits a year ago. It's like, how much power is he really going to have? But I think he has more natural power than Eli currently. And I think from a physicality standpoint, you can really see him getting to solid average power without having to project too hard.
I want to ask two questions about Grady Emerson. One, because Jamie hates comps. Who's the best comp? Because the name that I want to say is Bobby Witt Jr., but I know that's not fair, right? Yeah. And secondly, what are the chances that the Rays actually don't take him second, that the Twins would have an opportunity to take him?
Yeah. For the first one, I just don't think it's the same tool set that Bobby Witt Jr. have. I think it's almost like an inverted profile. Like when Bobby was a high schooler, like there was some hit questions with him. He swung and missed a little bit on the circuit. He was not the sort of pure hitter then that Grady is now. And I think every secondary tool, Bobby was just more explosive, more dynamic. There was more power. There was more foot speed, certainly. He was a flashier defender. Maybe you could say similar arm, but I even think Bobby's arm is probably a little bit better. I don't think that Jordan Lawler is all that terrible. I think that the tools for Jordan Lawler at the same time are more comparable. I do actually quite like the Eli Willits comparison, just from like an overall sort of profile standpoint. I really liked Eli a year ago. I know some people were lighter on him. Again, I think Grady's power is better than Eli at the same time. I think from a physicality standpoint, he's a little bit more advanced, but just that sort of like hit tool driven and then super well-rounded secondary skill set, I think is kind of the player you're thinking about here with Grady. I'm trying to think if there's any other really great comp for him.
Because it's going to be hard for us to sell to other Twins fans. And there's only a few dozen of them right now. If you take a high school shortstop number 2, like you're thinking that's got to be the guy. Like Bobby Witt is the guy. Now, if we say Jordan Lawler and Eli Willits, that's less exciting. And obviously, Willits is very young, and Lawler's gone through his stuff. But I
actually don't know that like Max Clark is a terrible comp for him in terms of like how I see him as a hitter. Maybe the power questions with like the way Max hits and the way Grady hits is very much hit first. At the same time, I think they're both going to be really valuable defensive players. Max was a better runner and is a better runner than Grady. Yeah, maybe that's one that's a little bit more like I think Grady's hit tool is so good and he has been at the top for so long that his secondary tools get underplayed. Like he could very well wind up being an above average runner, above average defender, shortstop, above average power. Like you're not going to get Connor Griffin tools with 70 potential pure hitter at the top of the draft every year. I think Grady Emerson, he would be 1-1 in a lot of other classes pretty easily. I think this class just happens to have Rock Chalowski.
Right. And the Rays chances that they pass. What do you think?
It's hard to say. I feel like Grady would be the favorite for the Rays. I feel like both the Rays, the way I'll put it is this, like no one really thinks that anyone is going 1 at this point except for Rock Chalowski. Right. And then Grady Emerson feels like the other player in this class that has the highest floor. It feels so unlikely that he gets outside of 3. No one really thinks he's getting outside of the top 3, whether or not that means that teams think if the Twins get a chance, they're definitely going to take him, or if they think it's just the Rays are probably going to take him. I know both those teams have been scouting him massively throughout the spring. Like it wouldn't shock me if they both had someone watching essentially everything he did this year. I don't know that I would feel confident in any other player in this class to take them over Grady Emerson right now. Maybe you could make a case for a Vahn Lackey. Maybe you could make a case for Jackson Flora. But for me, I think it's tier 1A, maybe like I'd say Rock's tier 1, Grady might be tier 2, and then you get to a separate tier after that, for me personally. But I guess things could change here. I just think the college players behind haven't really like made that push to supplant him for number 2. I don't think that's happened yet.
Yep. Well, let's talk about a college player who has made a massive push up the board and someone who's sneaking into conversation for top 3, and that's Georgia State catcher Vahn Lackey, who's been, I think fair to say, a revelation this year. 160 plate appearances, hitting 398, 519, 789, walking 18% of the time, striking out just 13, 12 home runs, double his previous career high, a 169 WRC plus as we're recording today. I'm curious, Carlos, for your view on catcher as a demographic in general. We often hear and talk about, well, prep catching is really difficult to kind of prognosticate. I think catching is in general. Like if I think about recent college catchers who have gone inside the top 10, a lot of those guys haven't necessarily worked out, and guys who have worked out have been taken a little later in the draft. Is there a hole in Vahn Lackey's offensive profile, and do you think he's worthy of top 3 consideration at this point?
I do think he's worthy of top 3 consideration right now. If I was picking 3 and it was Grady Emerson, I probably would go Vahn Lackey 3 if it was just me. I think the hole in his game is maybe just that, like, the pure bat speed that he has is maybe not elite bat speed or even plus bat speed. So there probably will be questions about that. But for Vahn Lackey, the way I had it described to me this past week in a conversation was, even if Vahn Lackey is just an average hitter with average power, he's still going to be an all-star because the defense is just that good. I agree with you entirely that I think that we're just really bad at evaluating catching at the amateur level, high school or college. But I do think the defenders who have separated themselves as elite catchers, typically that's pretty apparent. Like I think when we miss on catchers, we miss because we just don't really appreciate how much better bad defenders can get in pro ball. But the guys who are elite catchers this young to this degree, I think teams do a pretty good job of identifying them. Patrick Bailey with the Giants, he was an elite defensive catcher in high school and continued to be that throughout college. Vahn Lackey is that level of defender at this stage. He is a potential Gold Glover behind the plate. He is an elite athlete. He has played every position on the field already for Georgia Tech this year just because he can. I know that there are teams who would view him as a no doubt first round prospect if he was playing third base. He's that sort of athlete. And so even if you thought, hey, like if catching just somehow doesn't work for him, which would be shocking, or even if it's just, hey, we don't want him to catch every day, like the fact that you can just go play any other position, I think is like just another little benefit you're going to have. And the transformation that he has made physically over the last few years has really elevated his game. Maybe one of the other things that I'll point out too, that I don't want to undersell here, is Vahn Lackey's contact skills coming into this year were pretty exceptional. Like coming into the year, I viewed Vahn Lackey as like probably the best defensive catcher in the class, a ton of contact skills, doesn't strike out a lot. It's just like, how much impact is he going to have? He's shown significantly more impact. You mentioned the stats earlier. He's hitting the ball harder. He's getting the ball in the air. He's done everything that you want to see from him from an offensive perspective. And that's just given him like a super well-rounded profile. I had to kind of strain to see what does he not do for you. And I really think that like that pure bat speed question for me earlier in the year, he had maybe not had the sort of performance against 93 plus mile per hour velocity. But I checked his first 2 years at Georgia Tech with a larger sample and it was fine. Like nothing jumped out to me from that. So I just think it's super well-rounded. It's safe in the sense that like, even if you don't get a lot from him, or even if he falls short of like whatever offensive expectations you're going to have, he's still going to be a really good player. I think Patrick Bailey has been a pretty well below average offensive player for 3 years and has still been worth 3 wins or more each year. Like that's the sort of safety teams will have with Vahn Lackey.
Okay. Right on. Made me feel a lot better. Thank you. Okay, let's talk about an arm quick. I'm rewinding Carlos last year to 2025 and looking at the first 11 picks. We got Cade Anderson in there. We got Liam Doyle in there. We've got Tyler Bremner in there, maybe as a slightly surprising number 2, and then I think Jamie Arnold at 11. Coming into the cycle, I think fair to say it was seen as kind of a trio of guys, like who is going to separate themselves as college SP1? Is it going to be Cam Fluke? Nope, because he's been hurt. Is it going to be Liam Peterson? He's been a little erratic and dominant at times, but it's really been Jackson Flora out of UC Santa Barbara. I'm curious what you make of his performance. I mean, I guess a little bit of a similar question to Emerson in that we've seen him dominate and post and just look great. And is he going up against elite lineups every Friday night? Not necessarily. Curious what you make of Flora, and then how would you stack him against some of those guys who appeared in the top 10 this time last year?
Yeah, he has been kind of the one college pitcher who's gone out and done it. Like you said, Cam Fluke's been hurt. He was in that tier. Liam Peterson has been really erratic with his strike throwing. Jackson Flora has gone out and shown a better repertoire. The kick changeup that he's added this year has really answered a lot of questions about how he's going to attack left-handed pitchers. A year ago, around this time, he was a super heavy fastball slider guy. Again, the fastball slider were maybe 2 of the more exciting pitches in the class overall. So it's not like those pitches were like lukewarm or people didn't like them. I do think that you could maybe say Jackson Flora's fastball is a top 3, top 5 fastball in this class, a slider, similar range. But now he's got the changeup. So it's a really complete pitch mix that you feel good about. He moves well on the mound. He throws a lot of strikes. He's gone out and performed, like you said. I think the one thing for me that's been hard to fully get on board with Jackson Flora is, even though he checks all those boxes and he looks the part, he's not allowed a lot of runs. He's not had the sort of dominance that I would expect a pitcher of his caliber to have, particularly in terms of strikeouts. Like, he should be striking out more batters than he has been. That's kind of been the one hiccup for me. It's like a 32% strikeout rate. It's very good. But I feel like you typically see the top end guys are pushing these like near 40%, 45%. Like the Chase Burns, Hagen Smith year, they had 48% strikeout rate. Dax Whitney this year, who's probably going to be 1-1 or in the conversation for 1-1 in next year's class, he's striking out almost half the batters he's facing. Paul Skeens was in that 45% range. Like, I think Jackson Flora has the stuff to miss more bats than he is missing. And so that always makes me wonder, like, okay, why are you not? But he's very good. I don't mean to like downplay him here. There are a lot of, in particular, there are a lot of pitching analysts who just think the stuff that comes out of his hand is like exactly how you draw it up. The fastball has great ride. The slider has just wicked movement. The changeup has been like a revelation. So yeah, he checks a lot of boxes. I don't think that I would have had him as a top college pitcher from last year's class if he was in that group. I also think it's an interesting conversation of, like, would you take Tyler Bremner or Jackson Flora on the same team? I've asked that question to a lot of scouts who've spent time with both of them, and you'll get differing answers. I think Flora, from like a just power perspective, people seem to like a little bit more. But Tyler Bremner, I think, had a little bit more command or pitching ability that maybe if you prefer that sort of pitcher, you would take Bremner. I'm probably a little bit more in the Bremner camp, but I also think that, like, once these first 3 hitters that we've talked about, I guess we really haven't talked about Rock because I don't know if we need to.
We've taken him off the board. Yeah.
I do think that once those 2, then Emerson and Lackey, I would take those guys before Flora. But after those guys are off, I think Flora is as compelling a prospect as anyone in the class at this point.
Okay.
I gotta ask this question. I ask questions that make Jamie's eyes roll. The Twins drafting 3rd. We've seen in the last couple of years, guys get drafted, guys make their big league debut. Typically, it's because of the Angels, right? But
yeah,
as we see these long-term contracts happening faster, like the timeline after these minor league teams have been eliminated, these timelines get sped up. Cholowski, I think, is probably the one that you would say is closest to the bigs. Is there another guy that's even in that same area code? I mean, do we have the opportunity? The reason I ask is because when teams get close to the playoffs, teams get close to the draft, and they're competing, that becomes a fan base thing. Like, which guy can help my team in September?
Right.
How do we feel about the top of the draft?
I think Flora would probably be among the quicker movers in the class. I mean, Grady is a high school player. I do think he would be on that track of like among the quicker movers for high school players, for whatever that's worth. And some of those guys have actually moved really quickly. Like Connor Griffin, if we talked about him in 2024, there's no chance anyone would have thought about him debuting 2 years later. Cameron Flukie is definitely a dark horse name that I would keep in mind if I was a Twins fan, because I think in some ways Cameron Flukie is a more advanced pure pitcher than Jackson Flora. In the offseason, we really spent a lot of time going back and forth, like picking out which of the arms we would take personally, which we like. Cameron Flukie was a pitcher who, the more I dug into his profile and like watched video, watched film, saw him throw, the more I really liked him. It's an unusual looking delivery, but he has tremendous feel to land his fastball. It's got similar like great riding life and power that Jackson Flora has. He's got multiple breaking balls that have been quite effective. So I think he should be coming back here within the next 2 weeks. I think if he's the same pitcher he was a year ago, I think he's a no doubt fits in the top 10. And if he really performs, he could push his way right up into this conversation here with the Twins. And that would definitely be a player who I think could fit in the, some of these faster moving college arms we've seen in recent years. Like not a Paul Skeens level, but like a Chase Burns, a Rhett Lauder. Like I think in that tier of pitcher, he would belong there and could move maybe as quickly as some of those guys have moved.
Carlos, I got to ask you about one more individual guy, or I will get yelled at, and that is Justin Lebron. I'm going to pitch something. I know. I'm going to pitch something to you to get your reaction to it. And I do want to preface this by saying I believe you guys had him 14th in your most recent mock draft. I had someone who works in baseball who I have a lot of time for say that Justin Lebron is much closer to a mid to late first round pick at this stage than to a top 3 pick. What is your take on that? And just what do you make of, I guess like the disappointment of him repeating the same challenges we saw last year, which is just a complete dud when it came to conference play and his offense just falling off a cliff?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that entirely because that's basically exactly what we've heard for the last 2 weeks. If you look at our draft board right now, Justin Lebron is the second-ranked college hitter in the class for us. When we update later this month, that will not be the case. I had him in the back of the top 10 in early drafts of the mock and was just sending around trying to get feedback on it. It was like, hey, Justin Lebron is too high. He does not belong as a top 10 pick at this point because of what's happened in conference play. Like you mentioned, he has had, so a year ago, he was like one of the best college hitters in baseball, non-conference play. He was just off to a scorching start. And then the brakes were slammed when conference play happened. He really struggled. This year it's been more of the same or even worse. The strikeout rate is not quite as high in conference as it's been in the past. A year ago, it was 30% plus. This year it's right around that 20% mark, but he's just not performing. I think there are significant hit tool questions with him because of that. I mean, those were kind of the questions for him entering the year. Conference play for Justin Lebron was maybe as important as any player in the country, because if he passed that test from a physicality standpoint, from a tool standpoint, from an athleticism standpoint, he would have had an argument to usurp a guy like Grady Emerson. If he came out and took a step forward offensively, and if he was giving teams comfort in the hit tool, you could look at him and say, okay, more dynamic defender than Grady Emerson? Yes. More power than Grady Emerson? Definitely. Faster runner than Grady Emerson? Yes. Just a much more dynamic athlete, maybe than anyone in this class. There are a handful of guys I would include in that. But like Justin Lebron, I think pure upside rivals Rock Chalowski. But just the hitting, even defensively, like that's an element of this too. Like he's been much more error prone than he's
like
been
13, I think.
Yeah, he has more errors this season already than he's had in any previous year with Alabama. And it's really odd for Justin Lebron because you watch him take in and out. You watch him make plays. He moves at such a high level. For him, I just have like more hands questions, just like hand-eye coordination questions, just the softness of his hands. I think he's a better mover in the field than Rock Chalowski is, but Rock Chalowski just has this level of reliability and assuredness with his hands that LeBron is really not that close to right now. So he is falling into that range. I think at some point there's going to be a team that just takes a shot on that upside, because if he does hit, if he's even a 40 hitter, the way he can impact the game is massive. But it's been tough to see, because the way I'd say it is, like, Justin Lebron is a very easy player to fall in love with when you see him when he's going well. He looks like a superstar when you're seeing him well. And so I hope he can make some adjustments. I don't know if it's a pitch recognition issue. He's consistently struggled to spin. There's a lot to figure out there, and maybe would want to put him on a slower track than certainly some of these other guys.
Yep. Carlos, I'm gonna quickly throw some names at you to kind of round out the field, and then we're gonna play a very quick game, and then we'll get you out here. So I'm gonna put the college field and the prep field all together, just with some guys that are kind of in and around the top 15 at the moment. On the college side, Sawyer Strohsnyder, we're fans, I think, in this this podcasting room. Chris Hakopian, who's missed a little time with injury. AJ Gracia, who is just solid hit power combo. And then I guess the prep field, Jacob Lombard seems to have kind of resurfaced a little bit after maybe a little bit of a dip. And then EJ Booth is probably the fastest riser on the prep side. Any favorites from the college field or the prep field names that you heard there that you want to advocate for? Not necessarily as the top three guy, but just particular favorites in this class.
Of that group, Strohsnyder is my guy. I really love, and it's weird because, like, he's sitting under 300 right now in college, but he's also showed a much better approach this year than he did a year ago. He's walking 20% of the time. He's still been a very productive hitter despite that average. So I think he is one of the toolsiest players in college baseball. You could say it's 60s across the board outside of the hit. He's a great runner. He impacts the ball tremendously. He's a good defender in center field. He moves really well for his size. So yeah, I would take Strohsnyder at the top of this. Again, after Lackey, Emerson, Cholowski were off, I'd really be thinking hard about Sawyer Strohsnyder. A name that I'll throw out that I think for the Twins in particular could still be a fit inside the top five, who you did not mention in that group. Drew Burress, Georgia Tech. So I don't know that, like, the Twins are definitely on him or not, but what I had it described to me is, hey, like, a lot of teams think Drew Burress fits in the middle of the first round, or even some teams who are maybe more like traditional scouty, really weighing the tools and the projection heavily, would have him lower than that. But model teams are going to absolutely stuff Drew Burress. He was struggling a little bit early on compared to his typical norms, which his typical norms are better than everyone in the country. He's been like one of the most prolific offensive players in college baseball. But Drew Burress definitely should be just in the mix as a dark horse name inside the top five. He gets the ball in the air a lot to the pull side with impact. He can play center field. Very polarizing player. Him and, like, basically all these other college outfielders are super polarizing. But if you're a Twins fan and you've been kind of aware of the college game, I'm sure you know who Drew Burress is. He seems to be a fan favorite for a lot of people, and I definitely think he's still in play at the top of the board, even if, like, not every team in the industry would have him there.
Ooh, nervous. I don't think
you like Drew Burress. I'm a little bit more on the pessimistic side as well, but we have, even in the BA office, we have wildly different opinions on
yeah, and that makes sense. I just think there's a lot of orange flags there for me. I mean, if you look at his overall production, it's 20% worse every year in college, and if you're weighing age-adjusted performance, you want to be headed in the other direction. Right. I actually thought you were going to say Tyler Bell when you were like another prospect. But Burress is interesting, and there's definitely people who are banging that door, but I am personally not one of them.
Yeah.
I also just think there's not like a prolific track record of like 5'9" dudes who are dudes.
Agreed. Yeah, it's a very short list, especially if you're a right-handed hitter.
Okay, Carlos, let's play a quick game and then get you out of here. You've been very generous with your time. We tend to do this when you come on, where we try and give you some pairs of players from from your board. And we've tried to pair similar prospects together to make you pick between them, try and give you a difficult decision. And we're going to ask you to pick one of the two, one of the pair that you're presented with, and then kind of give just a quick rationale of like, why is that your guy and not the other one?
Yep. Beautiful. I'll try and not be long-winded. I know I can.
You're totally good. We'll start with college hit power combos with uncertain defensive homes. So it's going to be Ace Reese or Chris Hakopian.
Oof. My mind tells me Hakopian, but my heart tells me Ace Reese, and I think I'll take Ace Reese because he's a left-handed hitter. But I'm not confident in that one.
Okay,
really killed me off the start.
Aim to make life difficult for you. Okay, we're going into this very muddled college outfield demographic where you could, I suppose you could view it as like no one separated themselves, or you could view it as this is really fun and there's something for everyone here.
Mm-hmm.
So how about UT outfielder Aiden Robbins, who's having a ridiculous year, or A&M outfielder Caden Sorrell?
I'm going to go Robbins. Caden Sorrell has been awesome. He's getting to that strikeout threshold that really terrifies me in the first round. So Robbins, I think, just has a little bit better feel for the barrel. Less chance to stick in center than Sorrell, but the hit risk for Sorrell for me is just too high.
Fair. Okay. We also talked earlier in the kind of pitching conversation about how maybe there's not the kind of elite college arms in this class. There are, however, guys who have shoved their way up boards by having really strong seasons. So I'm picking 2 SoCal college pitchers. You got to give me
I'm
Mason
definitely taking Redmond over Edwards. Those are the 2. I have long been a skeptic of Edwards, and at this point, I don't know if I can keep justifying it because he's been so dominant. But Redmond was one of the guys. He was in that similar Dason Hill sleeper range preseason for me, and so there is some personal investment in this. But I just think Logan Redmond is one of the best pure pitchers in the class. He has added 2 miles per hour in velocity. He's just coming off a dominant start versus Rutgers. I think he has really quality secondaries. And I don't know. I'm more skeptical of Mason Edwards than Redmond, so I'm going Redmond.
Okay, that's also crazy because Edwards struck out 16 and then Redmond came back and struck out 18 on the when they pitched the same night. The thing that is crazy to me about Redmond is, on top of everything that you just said, he's walking 3.8% of dudes this year.
Yeah, that's a separator for me. I think his command is just next level compared to a lot of the guys in this class.
Okay, how about some more confusing outfield prospects? We'll go TCU outfielders Chase Brunson or Texas Tech Logan Hughes.
Oh man, honestly, these 2 are both tougher sells for me. I'll go Chase Brunson. But part of this is because I saw Logan Hughes maybe the worst week of his season. We saw him opening weekend, and then he's been lights out ever since. I'll go Brunson, but another one kind of like your first one where I don't have as much confidence as some of these other ones.
Okay, last but not least, I'll give you some pitchers to finish this off. Let's do University of Mississippi righty Cade Townsend, or one of my favorites from the college season so far, and Cole Carlone.
Yeah, I'm going to go Carlone as well. Townsend is, again, as soon as you said Townsend, I was like, I'm probably going to take the other guy just because for whatever reason, Townsend has been a tougher sell. He's been dominant. All this stuff looks good. Carlone, a lot of reliever risk here. But I do think that if you want to say he has the best slider in the class, it's a filthy pitch. He's a huge frame. I don't know. Garrett Crochet had a lot of reliever risk too. He's turned out pretty good. I'm not saying Cole Carlone is Garrett Crochet. I just think sometimes that gets overblown, especially once we get into this tier of arms. And just the pure stuff and the workhorse build with Carlone really excites me. I think, again, when he's on, he's unhittable at times.
Got it.
Okay, I want to ask you one question similar to this, but more Jeremy than Jamie. When you're doing your draft thing on draft night, is there going to be a more intriguing story for a player that gets drafted on the first night than Joseph Contreras' story? Is there going to be a backstory that is going to be super exciting for you to tell? One that is more exciting than that one, or unique?
Yeah, in terms of day one, kind of just scanning to see if there's a guy who jumps out. Probably not. No, I mean, I think his is really good. And he also just has such a unique pitch mix for a high school pitcher. That's cool. Yeah, I mean, the Lombard story is cool as well. If we're talking about family ties, just being able to see kind of some of his how Jacob Lombard has gone about it with his brothers, with his father. That's kind of just fun to see. Yeah, no, I don't know if there'd be any guys that top that for me necessarily. Those are two good ones.
Okay.
I feel like
All
I
right,
never
Carl.
have time to get into the backstories as much as I'd like. It's like, hey, get your words
Oh,
in on the
man.
guys. We're moving on.
Well, and this would be your opportunity to get that in. That's that
Mhm.
story that you want to tell. So then
Yeah.
on the draft night, you can say,
Yeah.
we talked about that in depth on Destination to Show Up.
Right.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Shout out.
I mean, it's also hard because MLB keeps changing how many rounds there are on day one. What are we up to?
Oh
4,
my
I think,
gosh.
this year? 135 picks instead of
Who
100?
knows? Yeah, we'll see next
Is
year.
that really what we're doing on the first night?
Yeah,
130.
they changed it again last week, I guess. So
Oh,
anyway,
meals.
Carlos, you as always have been super generous with your time. We truly appreciate having you on regularly as a guest. Anything that we can plug and get the word out around Baseball America and you guys work before we let you go?
No, you mentioned it already. BaseballAmerica.com for all the writing and rankings content you want to see. And then on the podcast, it's the Baseball America podcast, where I do the draft show weekly with JJ Cooper with some occasional other guests. And then Future Projection is where me and Ben just kind of go on tangents about all things prospects. Just hang out for a couple hours. So those are the places to find me.
All right. Thanks so much, Carlos. We appreciate it. We will catch you guys next week with some review of which Twins minor leaguers have been making waves early in the season. Until then, catch you guys later.